The serpent back there was really the devil, the one who becomes known as Satan. And by the way, look at the way John words this.
Dr. Michael Heiser explains whether or not the snake in Genesis 3 was a spiritual being. So let's get right into it. Shout out to the late, great Dr. Michael Heiser. Go subscribe to his channel.
But let's just put that aside for now. And I want to ask this question, just for the average person watching this video, and even the evangelical scholar if they do. The first question is, do you believe that John was correct? The Apostle John, writing in the book of Revelation. Do you believe that John was correct or mistaken in Revelation 12:9? This is the verse where John, we might as well just click out to it so that you can see it. Revelation 12:9. This is where John mentions the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan. So the serpent, the devil, and Satan are connected, in this verse. It's the only time in the Bible where these terms are actually connected in the same verse. And this is the last book of the New Testament. But the question remains, do you think John was correct or not? If you think John was correct in this identification that, hey, the serpent back there was really the devil, the one who becomes known as Satan. And by the way, look at the way John words this. That ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan. It doesn't mean, John's not saying, because John knows his Old Testament, this does not need to be read as though John is looking at Genesis 3 and seeing the word Satan in there. He's not. It's not there. But that rebel comes to be known as the devil, which is just, the slanderer, the liar, and Satan, the accuser. This individual rebel becomes known by these terms. That's all John is saying, and he's connecting the dots. So if you think John is correct, then you must conclude that the serpent in the garden was more than an animal. It's not just a snake.
Right. I mean, I always grew up thinking that it was the devil. And then someone I remember in a Bible study is like, that the Bible doesn't say that the snake was the devil or a demon. No, it just says a snake. But we don't know that. In Revelations here, that's crazy because it says something about all three together.
If you say he's mistaken, then you have a serious problem with biblical coherence and really biblical inspiration, at that point. And for evangelicals, again, I don't know how you're going to take that position. Second question I would ask, of viewers, and again, anybody else, if we were in a different forum, scholars who are saying, well, you can't really, this view isn't what most scholars think. I don't really care. I'm asking a serious question. I just asked one. Do you think John was correct or not? If you say he was correct, then the serpent in the garden is more than a snake. Question 2, do you believe that Genesis 3 was intended to provide us with lost zoological knowledge? Is Genesis 3 a zoology lesson? Now, I've mentioned this before, but if you put the question that way, is Genesis 3 really designed to teach us about, catch the wording here, about the evolution of the snake before it had legs and could talk, and now the snake as we know it now? Again, I think that's ridiculous.
Well, what if there's two separate snakes? What if in Genesis they're just talking about a normal animal, and then in Revelations it's using a symbolic metaphor for Satan as the snake? Two separate things. I don't know.
But you'll see it in evangelical literature, and I think, again, that's why a lot of scholars react, against it, because it's kind of cartoonish. Genesis 3 is not teaching us about zoology any more than Genesis 1 is teaching us about astronomy, where we have the sun created after we have days. I mean, how does that work? Again, you know from the class on metaphor, and just the class where we illustrated metaphor with Israelite cosmology, the purpose of these chapters is to teach the reader who God is against all the other gods, why we're here, who put us here, what our purpose is, what our destiny is, the whole concept of imaging. It's designed to teach us, yes, that there is a God, and he created what we know here, but God doesn't bother to use people who could give us a sophisticated 21st century presentation of science. If he did that, God made a horrific mistake, because he had people writing in the second millennium BC and the first millennium BC and the first century AD. They are not capable of giving us a scientific presentation that would satisfy a 21st century audience.
Right. I always remind people the Bible is not a science book. It's not here to tell us how exactly 2 + 2 = 4. It's not a math equation. But also, remember, he talks about the council of gods in Psalms 82, and he thinks there's something more to that. There's other spiritual beings, and they use the lowercase g God in that description as well.
It's a good thing, because 500 years from now, we'll be laughing at points of the science that we think is just settled now, because it'll change.
True.
That's not what Scripture's about. God deliberately, this was his own decision. He did not tether the truths he wanted to communicate to something, i.e. science, that he knew would change and would never stay the same. Again, we talked about this extensively in the metaphor episode. I have lectures online, again, I directed you to. But if you're gonna take that position, then it's absurd to think that Genesis 3 turns around and teaches us zoology. So, again, how could you draw that conclusion? I don't think it's teaching us zoology. I do think John was correct that we have a divine being here, either in the guise of a serpent, or we should look at the term hanakash, which is the serpent, in different ways. I think personally, and you know this from reading Unseen Realm, that what's going on with that terminology is we have a double or even a triple entendre with the nakash, because depending on whether you consider it a noun or a participle, it can mean the snake, the serpent, it can mean the one who practices divination, like deception, or it can mean the shining one. And all three of those things are going to be sort of stock ways of presenting supernatural evil later on in the Hebrew Bible.
So I'd love to know what you guys think about this. I lean towards probably was Satan, or some being. What do you think? Really, the snakes just could talk, animals could talk back then? I mean, or was it just referring to something else? Why in the world did Adam and Eve not get shocked or weirded out when a snake was talking? So another thing to think about. I'd love to know what you guys think in the comments down below, whatever that may be. That would be great. And also, guys, if you never decided to follow Jesus, I encourage you to do that today. In the description below, you can click a link to help you to decide to follow Jesus for the first time. I encourage you to do that today. All right, guys, have an amazing day.